All right, folks, welcome to 365 Live. We've got a special guest this evening, Brian Nelli, who just dominated the Hobie Bass Open Series Tournament of Champions on Caddo Lake this past week. Brian, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, tell you what, day one, we had 96.75 inches. Day two, 96.25 inches. And you saved the best for last. When we thought the fish were going to be worse, 2 days after a cold front, you come in with 101.5 inches for a 3 day total of 294.5 inches, which anytime you get near the 100 inch mark in kayak fishing, that's kind of like the old 20-pound benchmark in boat fishing generally. So
Right.
you were right there at or slightly above that for 3 days in a row. How many fish were in that area you found?
It was ridiculous. They were loaded in there. I couldn't even tell you how many fish, I had missed or they just missed my bait. And, it was just a nonstop flurry for the first few hours of the day.
Man, yeah, the first little bit of the day, that's when you made hay with a topwater plug. And during the cold front, for 3 days in a row, they hit topwater every morning. Did
Yeah.
that surprise you?
No, again, the area that I was in, it's a little deeper section. Again, the lake on Caddo there is a pretty shallow lake. So I figured if, they're going to be with the colder water, they're going to probably push down into the deeper sections. So I thought my bite would remain consistent, even with the colder water temps.
And it did. I mean, you're a Florida guy. I'm a Florida guy. You're a little farther downstate than I am. And I don't know. It seems to me I'd be kind of surprised that they would bite on the surface that well after, I don't know, what was it, 34 degrees the final morning when y'all took off? I know there was frost.
29, yeah.
Yeah, man. I've caught them in 27-degree weather down here, but they were in brush piles. They weren't hit, right on the surface. That has to be fun.
Yeah, yeah.
What was one of the keys to setting up a topwater bite? Talk us through a little bit about the makeup of the spot and what kind of shad they were feeding on.
It was gizzard shad, and it was an area where there was like a 3 foot grass flat that kind of was up against some deeper water there. And they seemed to be just, hanging in that deeper water, pushing shad up into the grass. And early morning, all 3 days, it really kind of seemed that they were sitting in basically like a 10 by 10 kind of area that you could really only get bit. But then after the first hour or so, they would start spreading out, and or more schools came in, and then you'd see fish busting, 50 yards from where, I was fishing in that 10 by 10 spot. So I think, again, it's just a great ambush point for them in that section there, and they were using that to their advantage.
Usually, we think of a one cast spot as being current related. They're behind a rock or something that's current. There wasn't much current on that lake, was there? No
No,
moving water,
no, just the wind.
just the wind. So it was just an ambush spot. Classic. They could corral bait fish in there and do the deal. And when they were done, it was done, huh?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah. So big old gizzard shad. So you threw an 8-inch swim bait. No.
No,
What'd you throw?
no, it was it's probably actually probably is 4-inch top water. Again, this is a saltwater lure. It was actually a bomber badonkadonk with a high pitch rattle. So I had another angler right next to me throwing a larger profile bait without a high pitch rattle, and he was struggling. I was probably catching 10 to his 1, or having bites 10 to his 1 bites. So there's definitely something about the profile and or the high pitch rattle that was making them commit more to my bait.
Yeah, Nolan talked to me a little bit about that. He told me that y'all kind of camped out near each other the whole time, and on that final morning, he said you flagged him over, said, "Come on in here and throw in here with me." And he said he went through everything from the old school Zara spooks to the Japanese stuff, and he said, "Man, I couldn't get bit." He said, "Brian gave me one of those badonkadonks." He said, "The second cast I hooked up." He said it was
Yeah.
just they wanted that lure for some reason.
Right. Yeah.
You know. And you think it's a higher pitch rattle. 'Cause a lot of times when you hear people talk about a lower pitch rattle, that's kind of the big thing. The one knocker baits are more in style, especially for bigger fish. But do you feel like maybe they've been exposed to that too much, or what about the high pitch rattle do you think appealed to those bass?
Yeah. Again, I don't know. I throw a lot of the one knocker low pitch stuff for saltwater, and I've just been especially this year, the last few tournaments, I've been throwing that high pitch, the badonkadonk, and I've for bass it just seems to work great. So I'm not sure. It definitely there was something to it this time. But again, I don't really throw the low pitch one knocker type bait for bass. It's more of a saltwater thing for me, and it's working.
Yeah.
So
Well, everybody loves a badonkadonk, and apparently those bass were no exception. But yeah, you mentioned being in there with Nolan, and apparently, gosh, out 4 of the top 5, 8 of the top 10 guys were within sight of you.
yeah.
So this was kind of a hot area. Was it a boat race the first morning getting to your spot, or were you kind of like in a sneak hole where nobody else really had it dialed in as well as you did, or what?
Well, again, I in my area, like when I found that area and I'm looking at the map and kind of looking at where it was setting up, I thought that other people had definitely found it. Plus, during the 2 days of pre-fishing that I saw fish blowing up there, I thought I was going to have to race, 8, 10 guys to that spot because I thought there's no way nobody else saw this. But thankfully, I did get there first, and Nolan was the only one that had come up and said that he saw the same thing. And, we kind of talked a little bit and agreed to kind of share the area. Now I had a spot that I had marked that I felt was where I wanted to be. And he, agreed to let me, since I was there first, I, had first pick of where I wanted to set up. And he kind of set up, 50 yards from me or whatnot, a little bit further down the grass edge. But again, that one little spot that I had set up on definitely seemed to be, the money spot. So
Yeah, I'll say because I mean, like I say, a lot of guys found that area, but you won this thing by almost 20 inches. You started with a 10-inch lead going into the final round and expanded on that on what people thought would be kind of a slower day.
yeah,
But I mean, there were 11 fish over 20 inches caught that final day that I counted. You had 4 of them. So you did something, better than everybody else did. You're going to say it's just that having that spot dialed in, that 10 by 10 cast, that was pretty, that and the badonkadonk were part of probably the difference makers.
yeah. On the last day, the first day I got a limit within 10-15 minutes, and the second day I did the same thing. The third day was definitely slower. It took me a little longer, like 45 minutes to get a limit. And they're bigger fish, and they're definitely, again, there was in that one section where it was just I made a lot of casts, and I just did not get bit until I hit that one little spot. So I think I had 98 inches in that first hour. I went to go upload my fish because I did not have reception where I was sitting, and I let Nolan kind of get in there and do his thing, and I went to go upload, and then I came back, and I knew I was pretty much probably had it won.
Yeah.
And I just got up next to Nolan. The only reason I could have just stopped fishing, but like when you're watching bass busting shad, I just can't sit there. So I was like making casts every 5 minutes, and I upgraded, 2 more fish, another couple 20 inchers doing that. So again, it was just everything just came together. It was a ridiculous bite.
Yeah, Nolan told me about that. He said he was sitting there just cast. He said you just sort of sitting there chilling out, and every 5 minutes, go, yeah, I'll make a cast, just
Yeah.
whack, catch a fish. He said it drove him nuts. He said, and then yours were like, obviously good fish, and he's catching 17 inchers, and
Yeah.
like he said, when it's your time, and you were hot this week, definitely. So much so that you said it was kind of uneventful. It was almost too easy, almost
Yeah.
for a tournament.
Yeah. Again, and that's why I feel like, I've had so many other tournaments where I get like super pumped if you catch a big fish because you've been grinding all day and then you finally get a big one, but it's like, I just felt like I was just out there fishing because it was, I didn't feel pressure because there's so many fish. Like if I lost one, I wasn't worried. I'd just throw again and, I'd get another bite. So, typically you lose throw on top water, you're going to lose fish and miss fish, but you'd get upset because you missed one because, that you missed that opportunity, but there's just a plenty of opportunity to catch another one. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And people look at you in this snapshot of a tournament and think, oh, and they're jealous and it's just too easy. But what they don't realize is like I said, it's not always that easy.
Right.
Talk to me, take me back a little bit to the beginning of your kayak bass fishing exploits, and how did it go originally for you? Has it always been easy for you?
No, no, definitely not. Again, I've been fishing saltwater tournaments for 15 years. I've had some good success doing that, and I just wanted a new challenge. So I, got into the bass tournament scene, which I really didn't do a lot of bass fishing. Even though I live in Florida, the saltwater, took precedent over any freshwater fishing. So, but I did that. I had really good success with the saltwater stuff and tournaments. So I was like, I wanted a new challenge, and the Hobie series came out, and people talked great about the events. So I said I'm going to try these, this one year. So this was my third year doing the national trail stuff for Hobie. So the first year, I thought coming in, this is, it's gonna be like saltwater. I can do this. I can catch 5 fish, but I think I did 3 tournaments, and I maybe only caught 2 fish on each event. Like I didn't even get a limit on that first year, and it was pretty depressing. It was very humbling. So I was very taken back of the difference in how much harder it is to do, um, you know, tournament bass fishing, especially on different bodies of water. So last year, I came back, and I just made a goal of cashing a check, and I think I did 3 events last year, and I cashed a check in my last event. I just squeaked in there in 9th place and got a check. So again, I made small goals for myself, and then coming into this year, I said I'm really going to put more effort into it and really try to study and be get into it much more. And I put a goal out to say that I just want to get to the TOC. So I did 4 events. I did well in Santa Cooper. I cashed a check. I cashed a check in Susquehanna, which again is a different fishery than I like shallow water grass type fishing. So Santee was kind of what kind of fits my profile. And then again, I did Susquehanna, which the water level was really super low, so that was kind of also in my wheelhouse because it was like we were able to like wade fish, which is kind of like what I like to do, saltwater fishing. And then I had a mediocre performance in Eufaula, and those 3 events were enough to get me into the TOC. And again, going into the TOC, I was excited to where it was going to be at because again, it's a shallow water grass lake. I had good expectations, but my first day and a half of pre-fishing, I really wasn't finding anything. And then again, I came upon that area on day 2, and that was the end of it. But yeah, it was definitely a struggle in the beginning coming into the bass tournament world.
Yeah, took a little while to adjust, and then you make the TOC and get out there and bump around and find the magic spot. It's a good week to find that kind of a spot.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about your process when you're practicing. How do you go about finding water? Did you do map study first to say this looks like a place I want to hit, or were you just kind of in the moment, in the environment, and look at the map later and go, okay, that makes sense. I understand what's going on. What was your process? How you found that spot?
Yeah, well, I mean, seeing because there's been a lot of tournaments on that lake, kayak tournaments. So, my first inclination was, being up in the river and doing that kind of thing, and that really didn't work out on the first day of pre-fishing. And then I thought the trees would be a good thing, and some of the deeper water trees, and that wasn't working out. So I mean, I caught 1 fish and pre-fish on a tree, like fishing trees. So it just wasn't doing it for me. I know some of the other guys had some success with that, but it wasn't working for me. So I went back to what I know, and that's fishing grass edges. So I, started looking around some other places again on day 2 where there's some grass flats, and again I just kind of stumbled upon that action happening where they're busting shad in that area. And I found some other grass edges that were producing fish on a worm, that were good fish, 18-inch fish and pre-fish. But obviously, the if you can find a school that's like that, and again 2 days in a row, I figured that they're going to be there at least for the next day. So
Hmm.
that was the focus then once I saw that.
Is that grass held them in place there. And you mentioned the worm a couple of times. So talk to me a little bit about what type of worm you're throwing. How was it rigged? What was that deal? Was swimming
Uh,
it? Was
it's
what?
speed worm. I like throwing a speed worm. Again, this tournament was like just perfect because it's kind of the fishing I like to do. So I got to throw a worm. I got to throw a top water. My main baits are going to be a jerk bait, chatterbait, top water, and a worm, speed worm, specifically. So yeah, I was throwing the speed worm, 3/16, weight on it, real lightweight, and it seemed like a lot of the times the fish really weren't eating it. Like they'd hit it on the fall on your first cast, and then if you're just working the worm like on the grass, they weren't really going for it. Most of the fish I got were like within that. You throw it out there, and then you immediately were hooked up. So they were like in the fall of the speed worm.
Eating it on the way down, huh?
Right. Right.
Yeah. That's interesting. You mentioned the Susquehanna River being one of your favorite events. That was one I wanted to get to myself and didn't, just because I rode past that place a couple of years ago on a trip, and my son and I looked at each other and said, "We're coming back here one day and we're fishing." It's just gorgeous. I mean, it's
Yeah,
beautiful.
it was.
Uh, but being a South Florida guy, saltwater guy, that's not an event I would think you would go, "Yeah, that was I did well there." So talk to me a little bit about what was in play there and how you brought your skill set to bear on that fishery.
Uh, because again, it was super shallow, so you could see a lot of the boulders and things, and finding the riffles and things like that. So I caught a lot of fish on current breaks and little depressions in certain areas. And again, it's very similar to saltwater fishing. I mean, these fish in saltwater is set up in these depressions just like they do in a current, the current of the river. Like with our tides in the saltwater, these fish will set up on points and or depressions where there's a lot of current going through that area. So it really kind of correlated to me. So um, you know, it made sense. Again, is again if I feel like if that time if the water was higher, I probably would have struggled more. But because it was super low, yeah, I think I excelled at that because it kind of sets up the kind of same way it would in the saltwater.
Yeah. They dropped the new schedule for 2023 while y'all were out there fishing. Have you taken a look at that yet? The Hobie schedule for next year?
Yep, for sure.
Yeah.
It,
Anything on there kind of got you excited?
yeah,
Particular.
finally, I don't have to drive 12 hours to get to an event. Well, they actually put one in Florida, which is only a couple hours from me in the Harris Chain. So
Yeah.
I'm excited for that. And then, Santee obviously is about 7 hour drive, and I like Santee Cooper. Seminole's been a struggle for me the last couple times I've had it there, but again, that one's a good, 7 hour drive, so that's not terrible as well. And then obviously I'll go back to Caddo. They're going back there in the spring. It'll be different, but I got to see what I can do in the spring there. So those first four events, I'll be definitely doing those.
Yeah. Yeah. That's going to be interesting when y'all go back to Caddo in March. I
Yeah,
think it is. Yeah, mid-March. It's going to set up a little differently, isn't it?
right, for sure. I might,
And
might actually find a fish on a tree.
mine's fishing trees now. Cody Milton finished eighth, won Angler of the Year this week, and he
Yeah,
told me he figures he's the highest placing guy that was actually fishing trees. He said he kind of missed it. Should have been on the grass bite. He said that even though he placed eighth fishing the trees, he doesn't feel like anybody else did that well there. But maybe in March, maybe that'll play
right.
if the grass dies off. Yeah. Now the grass, that was a big reason that whole Texas end of the lake again. Most of the top 10 guys were there within sight of each other pretty much. Uh, that was the case, I guess, because that was the last green grass on the lake. Is that true? They've been spraying pretty bad on that lake.
Oh yeah, they're spraying all week when we were there. You know, I, I fished Louisiana side on the first day I came into town, and yeah, I didn't really find much grass. The grass was okay. It wasn't like I wouldn't say it was super green, but I mean it was still it was there. So,
Yeah.
it was something to fish. But yeah, it didn't look the best. But obviously, it was probably what was left of anything else. So it was the best area you could be in.
Yeah. Yeah. Now you mentioned something the other day when we were talking. You said bass fishing, tournament bass fishing is really hard to do comparatively speaking. This is coming from a guy who's had success in sailfish tournaments.
Yeah.
Come on, man. Could it possibly be as hard as sailfish tournaments in a kayak? I mean, talk to me about that because that sounds pretty crazy to me. That's
Uh,
like the extreme right there, going to the extreme with it, in my opinion,
yeah.
in a good way.
I mean, to be honest, I would challenge anybody if you have the time and want to experience something different to come down here and do one of the extreme kayak fishing events, especially the sailfish tournament. I think, in my opinion, that it is the most easiest for you to get lucky to catch to win that tournament, because when you're fishing for sailfish, you're really not, there's not very many different techniques that you can use. You're basically, most people are using the same type of bait, using the same techniques to catch the sailfish. Um, so there's not, like, compared to bass fishing, there's not what bait are you going to use, where are you going to use it, what location do you want to fish. It just, everyone's launching from the same spot. They're all fishing generally in the same area. And it's a matter of, if, the sailfish likes your bait and you're there at the right time and you don't lose them. So
Yeah.
it's more of, you can get the bite. It's more the skill comes into where, actually landing the fish. That's the only thing that's different.
So that's more of a game of execution then. You
Correct.
executing and landing them.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
again, the sailfish is, you can get lucky and win a tournament doing that. When they do their summer series where there's the meat fish come into play, there's definitely different techniques than that. Are more, not, you're not necessarily just going to get lucky catching a good fish. So
So what kind of technique do you use to catch sailfish? Are we trolling and just rolling with the tide there and using a popper or teaser to get them up, or is this all live bait, or how are
no,
y'all doing that?
yeah, it's all live bait. It, we're lucky in this area that we only have to go a mile or so off the beach to get into the area where the sailfish are at. We're slow trolling live baits. You can have your pick between whatever you like to troll. Most guys are going to use goggle eyes, or pilchards, and there's also, you can use blue runners. But most people are doing the exact same thing, and just, you have a couple baits out, and you're slow trolling around in an area that you think might be best. Some people will target something closer to an inlet, or maybe something closer to some wrecks. But it's just all a matter of running into them at the right time.
So you're a mile off from the blue water down there. Y'all, blue water comes in nice and close to y'all in South Florida.
Yeah,
I'm up here where I'm at, out of Jacksonville, almost Georgia. It's 70 miles, 72 miles to get to the stream, Gulf
yeah,
Stream out there. So yeah, I've never been able to get into it 'cause I can't afford the gas money, and it's a little far to pedal a kayak. But y'all are really in a unique situation down there. The way you're set up so close to just all of that, the stream and everything.
yeah. We're real lucky. In this area, I'd say if you're a kayak fisherman, it's you're probably in the best area in the country to do blue water stuff, inshore saltwater stuff, and we also have the freshwater exotics with the peacock bass and clown knife fish, as well as snakeheads. So if you're into fishing, and if you can't afford a boat and you like kayak fishing, you can do pretty much everything a boat can, because everything is in very close range to our shoreline for offshore, as well as all the inshore stuff.
So for guys who aren't fortunate enough to live down there and they want to come spend some time with you, throw out your contact info. There were Pushing Waters Charter. Is that correct?
Yep, it's Pushing Water Kayak Charters. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, all those things. Your website.
You dance on TikTok? You do dances on TikTok, or you just show fish?
The fish do the dances for me on there. But
Yeah, not going to see Brian Nelli in the challenge, doing whatever the latest thing is the teenagers are doing.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Just Google Pushing Water Kayak Charters and you'll find us.
yeah, yeah. The exotics are a lot of fun down there. I have done some of that. A couple of years ago, I was down there. I'd mentioned that old boy down there, High Trump, took me fishing, and
Right.
that was an experience. We jumped in this little suburban, and we're hauling off across Miami traffic. It's all shore based, which was an adventure already. And we get to this hospital, man, and he's like, all right, we got to fish fast. We got about 10 minutes and they're going to kick us out of here. So fish fast. So two guys went one way and me and him went the other. And he wasn't kidding. I caught a nice big peacock on top water. It was a blast. It was beautiful. Here come the security guy. So we gave him a few baits. We talked to him. He's our buddy. And he's like, tell you what, he said, y'all just fish your way around that way and, just keep moving. And I'll say I ran you off and we're cool. So now we figured the afternoon we'd go back and try it again. Went back to the same pond. This old girl had taken over the shift, and she wasn't in a golf cart. She had the painted SUV with the lights and the sirens and pulled up there and jumped out handcuffs. We thought we was going to jail. She read us the riot act. She didn't want no fishing lure. She didn't want to talk about fishing. We were just lucky to get out of there. But that was just a fun day of. It was one of those deals where I started to ask him, "Is this legal? Is this okay?" And then I thought, well, it doesn't matter. I'm going to do it anyway. You know, plausible deniability. I'll just be quiet about it. But y'all, that I've done snakehead fishing with Corey down there, who owns all the world records for snakeheads, and
Right.
y'all is just, I guess, on days when you don't get offshore, there's still plenty of stuff to do inshore. No matter what the weather's like, you could put people on some fish they probably never caught on this continent.
Right. Right. Yeah. That weather is always an issue, obviously, with the kayaks and going offshore. Our best weather months are typically May through August. But we catch sailfish, kingfish, all that type of stuff year round. It's just a matter of finding a good weather day. But if we do get a day that we can't get out there, we have plenty of things to do as backups. With the exotic freshwater stuff, as well as the inshore salt.
Hmm. Y'all aren't too far from some good bass fishing too. You ever get out there and practice your hook set a little bit close to
Uh,
home?
I haven't really. I don't know if you're talking about like Okeechobee and stuff. I haven't fished Okeechobee that much. Obviously, I used to fish Fellsmere and Kenansville and that kind of area there, and I just mainly would go there during the spring where I could throw a frog all the time and just have topwater blowups. But
Yeah.
yeah, I enjoyed doing that. Obviously, if I can throw a topwater, uh, if I can throw a topwater all day, obviously like this tournament, it's going to be a fun time.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, well, you did that pretty much this past week, and you had a blast. Obviously, topwater bite was on for you, and you killed it. That was good. Well, now whether you're at home trying to get a mile offshore out in the ocean, or trying to beat everybody to the hot spot on Caddo Lake, talk to me a little bit about your Hobie. What boat did you use this week? What model? What length? What propulsion method? And y'all couldn't use trolling motors, so it's
And
pedal or paddle, right?
correct for the tournament. Yes, you had
Okay.
the pedal or paddle.
Uh-huh.
This year I
Yeah.
was running a Hobie PA Pro Angler 14. Um, I have Outbacks as well. I like using Outbacks for a variety of different things just because of the weight factor. Obviously, the Pro Angler 14 is a little heavier, but is definitely worth extra work loading and unloading in the truck when you're on the water to have that extra space, and rod storage and all tackle storage with having the bigger boat. But yeah, I ran the PA 14 this year. I actually just got a PA 12 for next season because I just want to cut the weight down a little bit because of loading it in and out of the truck. But we'll see how that goes. But again, using the Hobies has just been like, for me in the tournaments as well as running my charter business, having the foot pedal power has been game changer. I can put people in a boat and that have never fished or never kayaked, and they can be out there all day and not struggle. It's definitely been an advantage for my business as well as my tournaments.
Yeah, I hear great things about 360 drive in terms of maneuverability. Had you been fishing the trees this week, it would have come into play for you, I believe, because a lot of the guys we're talking about, they could just cut circles in there and get really nice casting angles that are not available to a guy, in a big bass boat, let's say, standing up tall. You're down
Yeah,
low and you're sneaking in, and you can just turn on a dime. And apparently, there's a lot of advantages of that 360 drive.
for sure.
Yeah, being so nimble. Yeah, so the 14. It probably tracks pretty well, doesn't it? So that, even though it's got a little extra weight, once you get going, it probably tracks pretty nice and
Yeah,
fast.
and they have, you know, a skag that you can drop down. It keeps you straight. But honestly, I never even use a skag. I never really had a problem with keeping it tracking straight. So it's and again the turning radius on it was never an issue. It's just, again, for me, not having a trailer and loading in the back of my truck, I just went to the 12 to cut down on some weight, and
Hmm.
that's about it. But the 14 definitely tracks well, and from what I've been told, it's a lot faster than the 12. So I don't know if that's going to hurt me next year, but we'll see.
Yeah, yeah. So you don't have that comparison yet. That's what I'm hearing, and that's what I'm wondering. Just that extra length, and the weight you get it going. It seems like it would. I guess inertia. What I'm trying to say, kind of get it going. It seems like it would be a fast ride,
Yeah,
and definitely helped you get to the spot first the other day. Being first on the spot was good, and I know a lot of the grass lakes sometimes, like say like Susquehanna, places like that. You want the outback, I guess, or something a little smaller, more nimble, and the pedal drive isn't going to really help you there. But
right,
when you need it
right.
for sure.
Yeah, I did use the
Yeah,
Outback to Susquehanna.
yeah, yeah. Well, all right. Well, it's hey, congratulations. It's got to be a great feeling. Probably starting to sink in a little bit now. What this means to you to win.
Yeah, a little bit. Finally today, I started realizing what happened.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you feel like you hit a turning point where you can expect more of this next year, or this week is not really the exception, but you feel like I said, it took you a couple of years to get to this point. You feel like you're evolving with your bass fishing to where you're
For,
comfortable and ready to go next year.
for sure. Yeah, yeah. I mean, you know, I've been asked that already. Well, like, what's the next goal? I mean, for me is just to remain consistent. I don't, next year, I don't need to win an event, but if I can cash a few checks, I'll be happy with that. Obviously, I'd like
Yeah,
to win another one, but it's, for me, it's just being consistent in whatever I do.
yeah. Before I forget, let's just real quick run down the type of line, fishing line, rod, reels you're using with those setups with top water and with the worm.
I, again, I recently just this year got some bait casting setups. Again, saltwater guys. Florida saltwater guy. We all use spinning reels. So my top water was I'm using Shimano reels, Crowder rods, Yozuri braid. I have everything I have is braid. I don't think I can ever go back to using mono or even fluoro on stuff. Um, but spinning reels, spinning rods for the worm and the top water. Obviously, throwing chatterbaits on a bait caster, spinner bait on bait caster, those things on bait casters. But if I can use a spinning reel, I'm gonna.
Yeah, and the braid is good when you're in a kayak. It's a little harder to set the hook from a seated position, so I guess that no stretch property has got to help you some setting the hook. Are you a straight braid guy or with a leader or
I use a leader, yeah, on most of the stuff, yeah, depending on what the water clarity is like.
yeah? You're a saltwater guy. This is one of my favorite questions to ask people when they talk about a leader. Give me your leader to line connection. Are you a uni to uni guy or an Albright Alberto guy or what?
No, just uni to uni. That's it. Yeah,
Yeah, so uni to uni connection. And if that holds up well for the big saltwater fish, I figure it'll hold up well in the bass fishing environment.
yeah. I've never had a problem with it, so
Yeah.
works fine for me.
Now, when you hook a fish in that with that 360 driver, you pedal into them and keep them going kind of guy. 'Cause I know if I got a trolling motor and I set a hook, I'm turning the trolling motor that way and using a boat and everything to keep that fish tight. As opposed to like when I'm in my kayak, I'm sitting there stuck. Plus the kayak doesn't weigh very much, and I'm moving toward the fish. Sometimes keeping them hooked up is more of a challenge in a kayak than it is in, say, a big boat. Are you able to use that pedal drive at all to kind of move the boat where you want to move the fish while you've
Yeah,
got them hooked up? Or
and especially in this tournament, I the first couple days I didn't power pull down because I wanted to be able to run them down. I didn't want, obviously using top water treble hooks. I want to get that fish in as quick as possible. So, I actually, when I hook up, and especially if it was a good one, I'd be pedaling towards it, to try to get it to the net as quick as possible. Instead of trying to pull against, there wasn't current, but again, pulling, even just if you're power pulled down, trying to pull that fish towards you against the wind or, anything like that, where there's going to be more resistance, I try to avoid that.
Stock treble hooks on that bait?
Say again? Stock?
Were you running stock treble hooks on that bait, or did you replace
Yeah,
them?
I was. Yeah. Yeah. I believe if you just pop that package, that those hooks, no matter what they are, they should be sharp enough for the first few days of using it. So,
Yeah, yeah, they didn't let you down a bit, did they?
no.
That's good. I know you're a big DOA guy too. You like DOA lures for they make obviously some really good saltwater stuff. Have you used any of that over on the bass fishing side? Any of the popular
Yeah.
DOA lures?
Yeah. I mean, in practice, I caught a lot of stuff on the DOA things. I was actually throwing there. You have a little PT7 top water bait that works great throwing at the cypress trees because you don't have to worry about getting hung up on anything because it has a normal, um, like a swim bait hook on it instead of having trebles. But they make another bait that's like called a bait buster that, would work great as a gizzard shad imitation. And obviously they got, flukes, and they've just started doing freshwater stuff a few years ago. So they got some ribbon tail worms, some stick worms. I was just talking to him the other day, and, he's looking to expand in some more creature bait type stuff. And I was telling him how I love the speed worm, and they're going to probably be starting to produce those as well. So we'll see.
Yeah, that's cool. They're going to start making some freshwater stuff. But even before that, I know there's a lot of crossover sometimes. That mirrodine is a real popular, like a twitch bait. If you don't see as much in the bass fishing world, real prominent in the saltwater world, but it works well for bass too.
Yeah. I had that tied on. I caught a couple on the Mirrodine, Mirrodine lure, which again, that's one of my favorite baits for trout fishing, sea trout fishing. And I it definitely, I mean, it looks just like a small shad, and it's not like a normal jerk bait that you normally see with the bass fishing world with a lip on it. So I think there's a lot of crossover of saltwater type lures that maybe these people that have been bass fishing their whole life don't really, take the time to kind of to peek at and see what there's something different
Hmm.
out there. So
Yeah, the guys that live in Nebraska need to get on the website and order some saltwater lures from down east here. And I've been doing it the other way around forever. We got obviously some redfish out here in our marsh. I'm about 45 minutes from it. I'm more of a bass guy, but I'll get out there with a old Devil's Horse topwater plug or something I've used for bass fishing to catch trout and snook on that. And
for sure.
so I guess if it looks like something, a little fish, looks like a little fish, a big fish will eat it, right? Big fish eat little fish. So as long as it'll hold up, the hardware holds up. Ricky, we have a couple questions or anything to throw to, or what? Before we let Brian go.
Yeah, hey, this has been a really good show. Learned a lot. I told you I was sitting in the back and just kind of listening, and that's exactly what I did. There are a couple questions. I'm going to hop back off here, pop them up on the screen, and then if y'all just want to close this thing down, that'd be awesome. Brian, thank you so much for getting on here. I hope to have you on a bunch more, and maybe Vance and myself can maybe we'll grab Elliot and come down fishing a couple days. That'd be fun.
Sounds good.
All right, so I'm gonna
Yeah.
hop off here, pop these questions up there, and I think it's only 3 or 4. This is the first one of these we've ever done on the kayak side, and it went well. Really appreciate it. You're a wealth of knowledge for sure, and I'm excited to learn more about this kayak space. So, like I said, I'm gonna hop off here, and we'll get these questions up there.
All righty. Does this mean we've got to read, or how much time do you spend standing while fishing? That's a great question because you go from a bass boat or even fishing off a dock or a bank, and you can stand up, and you go to fishing from a seated position, especially when you got a gut like I got. I got to have a short handle rod. It's a big difference, big change for me, Brian. How much time do you spend standing, and that, especially in that 14 with that stability?
To be honest, very little. I've been fishing a kayak for 16 years, 17 years, so I actually feel more comfortable casting and sitting. Obviously, you know, when you get into these, you can fishing for 8, 9, 10 hour days. I'll stand up occasionally just to stretch my legs and whatnot. But, you know, casting wise and setting hooks and things like that, I prefer to be seated. Me getting on a boat is actually does not work very well usually because I'm not used to standing all day. So I actually prefer sitting down because that's what I'm used to.
You know, the old debate is fishing a sport. I think when you get in the kayak, we realize quickly we're putting a lot of sport back into it, aren't we?
Right, for sure.
Yeah, the athletic part of it. So let's see. Would you run red treble hooks?
I wouldn't see why not. To me, to be honest, I don't get into the whole crazy color thing. I think some of these, especially in the bass world, people get fixed on these, you know, crazy colors of you got to have this blue one with these flakes and this red one with this color and that. But you know, to me, I think you know, a light color and a dark color, and you can pick whatever one you want to use, and that works fine. But again, with treble hooks, I don't see running a red treble hook compared to a standard treble hook is going to make a world of difference.
Well, like you say, you took that badonkadonk straight out of the box with the hooks that came on it, and they served you quite well.
Yeah.
You know, so there may be a lot more to be said for taking a lure they don't see very often from the saltwater world or wherever. Maybe that's the better play right now than to worry about so much about color, huh?
Yep.
Yeah. So how many rods do you carry? Our next question: how many rods do you carry? And that's a good question because space is limited on a kayak.
Yeah, I was running 7 rods. And again, that's a lot for me. You know, when I first started doing it, I'd probably have 4 or 5 rods. But again, after doing these tournaments for a while, obviously you want to have as many rods as you can that you can kind of, you know, switch out real quick to throw something else. But once you, especially in this tournament, once you figure out what's working, you run it down to the least amount of rods you have to take, you know. So I try to take the least amount of stuff as possible.
Do you have any accessories that help you carry more rods? Are you a crate guy, old milk crate guy, or
Yep.
anything like that?
Yeah, actually just recently upgraded to the new Yak Attack the crate. Sorry, but I do not remember what it's called.
Black pack.
Yeah, the new black pack. I don't know what the name
Yeah.
is, but it's I liked it because it has the lid on it and I can lock it and I don't have to take my crate off you know, after loading to the truck and worrying about stuff blowing out or, you know, anything like that. So I like the new Yak Attack crate.
Somebody was mentioning it also has these rod holder turrets, they call them, where it can swivel to a 45
Right.
for like going under cypress trees or low bridges and things like that to get it down low. You know, so it's a very well thought out piece of equipment. I saw it at ICAST, and it's definitely already a huge hit.
Yeah, it's
If you don't have one.
very versatile of what you can mount on there. Like they give you a plethora of options of how you want to mount it. You can mount it any way, you know. So it's really neat.
Yeah. Probably the add-on of the year of the kayak world so far, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned Caddo a lot. Would you say it's a difficult lake? Because it humbled me fast. So, as that's coming from our boy Elliot Fitzgerald there.
I can't say that it was difficult for me. So
Yeah.
yeah, obviously, you know, it was a little frustrating the first day and a half of pre-fishing for sure. But you know, once you start getting on something, and again, once even just before I found the topwater fish, you know, finding you know, the grass edges, running those grass lines with a worm is, you know, I was picking good fish up. So even if I didn't find those topwater fish schooling up there, I felt like I still had a good shot catching, you know, 18, 19-inch fish on a worm running the grass edges. But obviously,
Come on, Brian, you're making it too easy. You got to build the drama a little, make up a story or something. At least be like Cody Milton on the other tournament the other day. He fell off a 20-foot cliff pre-fishing and had a black eye and all. I mean, it made a great story, right? You go stub your toe or something, man. Make it harder next time, will you?
I know I feel bad. I feel bad. Like everything just came together so easy. So I don't know.
Yeah, like I say, people like to see the car crashes, don't they? They tune into NASCAR if they want to see the crash. I mean, yeah, they want to see somebody win, but that's just how we are. So let's see. I've only fished it once, but dying to go back. Yeah, Fitz talking about Caddo, going back to Caddo. Well, you're going to go back there in March, and
Yeah.
looking into your crystal ball right now, what changes do you expect to have to make to do well there in March, as opposed to, because obviously it's going to be different.
Yeah. I probably the area I was fishing might not even come into play, but yeah, I think it's going to be a lot more trees, a lot more tree fishing, and that's what, again, from what I saw before, I thought the trees would be in a bigger play even in the fall when I was there this last time, but I think in the spring it's going to be, the trees will be a huge factor. So,
Does it have anything to do with your decision to get into a 12 and maybe instead of a 14? I know you mentioned the weight savings, but you'll be very maneuverable back in those trees with that 12 with a 360.
No, yeah, I fished some real tight areas in Santee Cooper or in spring this year, and with the 14, I really didn't have a problem. The 12 is not. It's not the reason for me to get a 12 again. I was just trying to cut the weight down of loading it in and out of the truck.
What accessories do you use to help you haul that boat in the back of a truck? Because a lot of guys would trailer that.
Yeah, I mean, I have the Boondocks bed extender. Again, with the 14, I don't know if I'll ever actually need that with the 12 or not, but I'll probably still have it on there just for long trips, just as a safety precaution. But other than that, it's just some straps and throw it in the truck.
Cool deal. Cool deal. Let's see. Got a question here. Do you use a trolling motor in practice? Because in the tournament you weren't allowed to, but in practice you could, right?
Yeah, I did have a motor on day one, and it actually broke on me on day one. But yeah, definitely having the motor in practice is a big advantage, just because you can cover so much water. Get to as many different places on lake as possible. So next year, I'm going to look at some other options motor wise, and I probably definitely will be running a motor.
Yeah. There's quite a few good options out there. In terms of kayak specific motors that are available, electric motors. So that's come a long way. That whole market is just exploding.
For sure.
Yeah, good options there. And some of the trails you can use a motor in, on competition days, but with Hobie, you can only use it in practice.
Correct.
So yeah, they have a really good pedal drive if you want to go that route, I guess, isn't it? Just about as good, and your battery's not going to die on you as long as you ate well the night before, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I had the pedal all week, but I'm used to it. So
yeah, it's carbo load.
Yeah.
What is the diet like when you're out there? Because we, all kidding aside, we are bringing some sport back into the sport when we can't use even a trolling motor, right? So, what's the routine like when you're on the road as far as living arrangements? Make sure I get enough sleep. Do you pack your own food or trust the local restaurant, or how do you handle that?
Typically, I'll go to the grocery store. I mean, depending on where I'm staying. Sometimes I'm camping. Sometimes I have an Airbnb. If I'm camping, I'm eating out more. But if I have a house where I can cook easy, obviously I go to the grocery store and get stuff. But on the water, I'm a beef jerky and protein bar guy. I got a cooler with some drinks, and I'll snack on jerky all day long.
Yeah, that's a pretty good way to go, man. Any excuse to eat beef jerky. Love beef jerky.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Well, Brian, I appreciate you taking some time to chew the fat with us here this evening. And again, congrats on a dominating performance, nearly a 20-inch win over 3 days. To put that in boat terms, you stomped on them. That's just all I can say. You've done great, man.
Yeah, appreciate it.
All right. Well, again, we'll probably catch you next time you win one of these, maybe in March. Yeah.